The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps as 13-year-old Avery Moore clutched her laptop against her chest, standing in the gleaming conference room of Technova Corporation in downtown Seattle. She was the only black face among the 5 finalists in the youth developer competition, her sneakers squeaking against the polished marble floor that reflected the city's gray October sky. The smell of expensive coffee and leather chairs filled the air, but beneath it all lingered something colder, the sharp scent of judgment that she'd learned to recognize long before she could code her first "Hello World." Avery had been invisible for most of her 13 years. At school in Atlanta, teachers' eyes would slide past her raised hand like she was made of smoke. In stores, clerks would hover nearby, their attention sharp and unwelcome, while other kids browsed freely. Even here, in this temple of innovation where merit was supposed to matter most, she felt the familiar weight of being seen but not recognized, noticed but not valued. The other finalists chatted easily with the executives, their confidence filling the room like expensive cologne, while Avery remained in the corner, her fingers tracing the worn edges of her grandmother's old prayer book tucked inside her backpack, her anchor to a world where she mattered. The presentation setup was intimidating, a massive screen, professional cameras, and an audience of Seattle's tech elite. CEO Greg Helms sat in the front row, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile as sharp as his tailored suit. When Avery's turn came, she walked to the podium on unsteady legs, the click of her shoes echoing in the suddenly quiet room. Her voice started small but grew stronger as she explained her creation, an app called SafeSpace that used advanced encryption to protect teenagers' digital communications from predators and cyberbullies. She'd written every line of code herself, teaching herself Python through library books and stolen Wi-Fi sessions at McDonald's. "Impressive presentation," Helms said when she finished, his tone dripping with condescension. "Did you really write all this code yourself? Or did Mommy help with the hard parts?" The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. Someone in the back called out, "Probably just copied it from YouTube tutorials." Avery felt heat rush to her cheeks as her hands began to shake. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor like she had so many times before. But something different happened this time. Instead of shrinking, Avery lifted her chin. "Every single line," she said quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness. "I can walk you through the architecture if you'd like." Helms waved dismissively. "That won't be necessary. These fantasy submissions only waste everyone's time." He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor like fingernails on a chalkboard. "This isn't a charity case competition. Send her home to practice her spelling." The cruelty of his words hit the room like a physical blow. Some audience members shifted uncomfortably in their seats while others nodded in agreement. Helms grabbed the printed copy of Avery's code submission from the judges' table, tore it in half with theatrical flourish, and let the pieces flutter to the ground like broken dreams. "Remove her from the finalist list," he commanded the assistant, his voice carrying the casual authority of someone who'd never been told no. In the audience, Dr. Sarah Chen from Google's AI division felt her stomach clench. She'd been watching quietly, taking notes on the young talent, but Helms's display of naked prejudice made her blood run cold. She'd seen Avery's code during the preliminary review. It was elegant, sophisticated, far beyond what most professional developers could produce. The girls' encryption algorithms were actually revolutionary, combining techniques that Chen's own team had been struggling to implement. Backstage, Avery's mother wrapped her daughter in fierce arms while tears threatened to spill. But even as humiliation burned in her chest, Avery whispered, "I know what I can do, Mama. I know what I built." Her fingers found her grandmother's prayer book again, drawing strength from its worn pages. 3 generations of women had faced down worse than this rich man's ignorance. By morning, someone's phone video of the incident had gone viral. Justice. For Avery trended nationwide as tech workers shared stories of their own encounters with prejudice. The comment section exploded with support. "That girl's code is better than half the apps I use daily," wrote one senior engineer. "Helms just cost his company the next Steve Jobs," added another. Dr. Chen watched the video 3 times, her admiration for Avery's composure growing with each viewing. Within 48 hours, Chen had tracked down Avery's contact information. The phone call came while Avery was at school, sitting in the library during lunch, working on her next project despite everything. Avery, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from Google. I was in that room yesterday and I need you to know your work is extraordinary. Avery's hand trembled as she held the phone. We'd like to invite you to our campus. We want to talk about your future. The Google campus in Mountain View felt like stepping into a dream. Unlike Technova's cold marble and fluorescent lighting, everything here hummed with creative energy. Engineers wore hoodies and sneakers, ideas flowed freely across open spaces, and nobody seemed to care about anything except the quality of your thinking. Dr. Chen introduced Avery to the team working on digital safety for young people, a project that had been stalled for months. Show them what you showed us, Chen said gently. Avery's hands flew across the keyboard, her code appearing on the massive screen like poetry in motion. She explained her approach to dynamic encryption, how her algorithms could adapt in real time to new threats, creating an ever-evolving shield around vulnerable users. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This 13-year-old had solved problems that had stumped teams of PhD-level engineers. How did you learn to do this? Asked Marcus, a senior developer who'd been skeptical until 30 seconds ago. Avery's voice was steady now, no longer small. When you can't afford fancy courses or equipment, you get creative. I learned to see problems differently because I had to. My grandmother always said that obstacles make us stronger if we don't let them break us. Dr. Chen felt something shift in her chest, not pity, but profound respect. This girl hadn't just survived rejection, she'd transformed it into fuel for excellence. Avery, we want to offer you something unprecedented. A full scholarship for advanced computer science training, a summer internship program designed around your school schedule, and most importantly, we want to license your safe space technology. We're prepared to offer you $1 million development contract. The number hung in the air like magic. Avery's mother gasped audibly from her chair near the wall, but Avery was already thinking beyond the money. Can we make sure it reaches kids who need it most, the ones who can't pay for protection? Chen smiled. This girl understood that real power came from lifting others up. Meanwhile, Technova was hemorrhaging. The viral video had triggered a cascade of consequences. Major clients pulled contracts, investors demanded Helms's resignation, and the company's stock price plummeted. Helms found himself on the wrong end of a very public reckoning. His LinkedIn profile flooded with criticism from industry leaders who'd once courted his favor. In a humiliating press conference, he was forced to publicly apologize, though his words felt hollow compared to Avery's quiet dignity. 3 months later, Avery stood on the same stage where she'd been humiliated, but this time as the keynote speaker at the National Youth Technology Summit. The auditorium was packed with students, educators, and tech leaders. Google had flown her first class, put her up in a suite, and treated her like the innovator she'd always been. But more importantly, SafeSpace was now protecting over 100,000 teenagers worldwide, with usage growing daily. When I was standing here before, Avery began, her voice now confident and clear, someone told me I didn't belong, that my work was just a fairy tale. She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the audience. But code doesn't see color. Algorithms don't care about your zip code. Innovation doesn't ask for permission, it just is. The audience erupted in standing ovation, many wiping away tears. Dr. Chen watched from the wings, thinking about how one moment of recognition could change everything. She'd instituted new policies at Google to actively seek out overlooked talent, especially in underserved communities. The Hidden Brilliance Initiative was already identifying dozens of young innovators who might otherwise have been invisible. In Technova's old building, now under new management, they'd installed a small memorial display in the lobby. Avery's original torn code printout had been carefully preserved under glass, with a placard reading, "In memory of opportunities almost missed. May we always look beyond the surface to find genius in unexpected places." Visitors often stopped to read it, many taking photos and sharing their own stories of being underestimated. A year later, on a quiet evening in her family's new house, purchased with her Google earnings, Avery sat in her custom-built home office, surrounded by multiple monitors and awards from various tech competitions. In her hands, she held her grandmother's prayer book, its pages now even more worn from constant use. Through her window, the lights of Atlanta twinkled like circuit boards in the darkness. "Thank you, Grandma," she whispered to the silence. Your prayers and your strength live in every line of code I write." On her desk sat a small framed photo from that day at Google, showing her surrounded by engineers who now considered her a colleague rather than a curiosity. But it was the handwritten note from Dr. Chen that meant the most. "Never forget, you were always brilliant. The world just needed to catch up." Avery opened her laptop and began typing. Her next project was already taking shape, a platform to connect young coders from underrepresented communities with mentors in major tech companies. She'd call it Bridge Code, because sometimes you had to build your own path to where you belonged. As she worked, her phone buzzed with messages from kids around the world using SafeSpace to stay safe online. Each notification was a reminder that her code wasn't just protecting data, it was protecting dreams, allowing other young people to explore and create without fear. In the reflection of her monitor, she could see her grandmother's prayer book open beside her keyboard, its words still guiding her hands as they shaped the future, one algorithm at a time. The last message of the night came from a 12-year-old girl in Chicago. "Thank you for making SafeSpace. It helped me report a cyberbully, and now I feel safe to code again. I want to be like you someday." Avery smiled, her fingers already moving to reply. The circle was complete, but the story was just beginning. Sometimes the most profound revolutions start with a single voice refusing to be silenced, a single mind refusing to be dimmed, and a single heart refusing to believe that talent has a color, a gender, or a price tag. In a world quick to judge by surfaces, remember that genius often wears the most unexpected faces, and sometimes it takes just one person willing to truly see to change everything. Remember, brilliance doesn't announce itself with fanfare or expensive packaging. It often whispers from the margins, waiting for someone wise enough to listen. The next time you encounter someone others have overlooked, pause and truly see them. You might be looking at the architect of tomorrow's solutions.